Stand and lead. That's the next lesson, number 11, that we're going to deal with. And before you start, like, I mean, all of these that we've been talking about actions are kind of like fruit. I saw the fruit. I'm feeling kind of hungry, but I'm going to resist eating it because it's here for illustrative purposes that, like, if you're Christian, there's certain fruit you're expected to bear. Like, the strawberry is probably, I don't know, to pray, or this is to lead. Anyway, ignore me if you can. So, stand and lead. What's so interesting about stand and lead? And why would you include this? Like, you only had like a certain number of lessons to write, but you chose to include this one. I was stand and lead. I'm like, why? And give some highlights about that lesson.
Yeah. So when you think of leadership, you're thinking in terms of, influencing others, and our tendency is to think, is well, especially as followers, is we want to follow somebody that's ready for a fight or ready to go somewhere and things like that, but that's not really what Scripture talks about. When it talks about the spiritual battles, it's the spirit, putting on the spiritual armor. It doesn't talk about going out there and to fight, right, in human terms, in sense of aggression. It uses the word to stand. Stand, therefore, and repeatedly talks about standing. And so when you think of that, that standing is also leading. It's where do we show grace? Where can we give room and show grace? And where is a point where we need to stand for truth? So understanding that distinction and growing in that ability to know where to yield and where to stand is part of that spiritual maturity.
So it isn't always to go and join all of these activist type group because they're for action, right? But it's to be able to stand for certain things that you believe in, and be okay with that, right?
Yeah.
Because I think offline, like some of these activists are kind of weird, and I think it's easier for us just to stand for truth and values and not go behave all crazy.
Right. Yeah. So we are in a culture where many are trying to stand for justice using human weapons, and kind of a vigilante sense of justice, and it can be kind of a mob mentality of thinking that somebody's been unjust to me, we're going to get back at them in all these various ways, whether it's through demonstrations, whether it's through violence, whether it's through riots, all these different ways. That doesn't change hearts. It may change wills in certain instances, but for the moment, but it doesn't change hearts. And so Scripture tells us that we can't, that we can't fight with these human weapons and hope to win these spiritual battles.
And to be carnal,
right,
in our fighting, right?
It tells us not to be overcome by evil. Don't join into that.
Right.
It says instead, overcome evil with good.
And so there is a proper and correct way to stand for justice.
Right. Yes, and that's what Scripture tells us.
Okay. Thank you.